I'm Bjorn Amundsen with Quarry Hill Advisors, and we manage a few hundred million of other people's money. If you have more than 10% of your investments in any one individual stock, including your own companies, you're going to be dangerously overweight in one stock. This is something I think you should consider a pants on fire emergency that's going to need your immediate attention. So to help that make sense, let me share some statistics. There's a study by someone named Heinrich Bessenbinder, and what he shows in that is that although the stock market goes up by roughly 10 to 12% per year, 100% of those returns are generated from the top 4% of companies. So that means that when you add up the other 96% of stocks, you get pretty much the returns of cash. The remaining 4% are so absolutely incredible that they pull the whole entire market up. So imagine you have Amazon that's growing at a bazillion percent per year, but they're crushing a ton of small businesses along the way. There's also another study by JP Morgan that shows 2 out of 3 stocks actually underperform the stock market. And now here's the scary part. Since 1980, 4% of all stocks in the market have suffered a permanent decline of 70% or more that they never recovered from. Now, I already know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Bjorn, my company is a lot different. My company is special. But I got to tell you something. Just about everyone who walks into my office thinks that their company is fantastic. And they think that their company is above average. But this can't be true. We're not living in Lake Wobegon. Not everybody is above average. And since everyone who walks into my office thinks their stock is above average, it can't be true. So diversifying your stocks is critical. But we have to do it without having some sort of a tax bomb that goes off. So I want to walk you through 6 strategies that you can use to help escape this trap. Strategy number 1, not all of your stock was purchased at the exact same price. So you don't have to sell all of it at once. You could pick out certain shares and pick the stock that has the least gains. So if you hold off on selling the most appreciated stock and only sell the stocks with the lowest amount of gains, that could get you out of part of your stock position without paying a whole lot in taxes. Again, be careful to work this with a financial advisor or with a CPA. A second strategy. So let's pretend you've sold any shares you can that don't have very much in gains. The second strategy would be to look at any charitable giving you plan on doing now, or maybe even over the next 10 years, and think about giving maybe 10 years or 5 years worth of charitable contributions away all in one shot. And for this, we want to pick out the very highest appreciated stock for these donations. This will create a massive tax deduction for you that can help offset some other sales. So let's give an example. Imagine you normally give $10,000 per year to charity. Instead, what you could do is pick out your $100,000 of most highly appreciated stock and give that to charity instead. Now, you don't have to give it all to charity in one lump sum to still get the tax deduction. You can use a tool called a donor advised fund. And so when you do that, you get the tax deduction immediately, but then it sits in a diversified account that you can control the investments on, and you can distribute the money over time. So perhaps you give $100,000, diversify and invest the funds, and then distribute $10,000 a year to charity, just like you were planning to do anyways. So it's a good way to get a huge deduction, get rid of your appreciated shares, and be able to double dip a little bit on your taxes by both getting the deduction and skipping out on some capital gains. You can do all of that without meaningfully changing the amount that you're actually giving to charity. Strategy number 3, let's try to optimize your capital gains. After you've got that big charitable deduction and after you've sold all of your high basis shares, you can take a look at what amount of stock you can sell with minimum gains. This way, you can still sell some amount of stock and use that charitable deduction that we took to offset most of the tax bill. Strategy number 4. Now, this is a newer strategy that is just starting up, but I think a lot of people should consider using a 351 exchange. What a 351 exchange is where you perhaps would take some of your stock and maybe some of your other ETFs or other assets and package them together with other investors. And when all of you package your stocks together, they all get packaged into one exchange traded fund that can stay diversified within the exchange traded fund. Now, there's important diversification requirements that you're going to have to hit that are more complicated than we'll get into in this video. So it's probably a strategy that works if you have several highly appreciated stocks that you can contribute to this exchange traded fund. Interestingly, once it's contributed to the exchange traded fund, each block of shares that you contribute are going to keep their original tax basis. So you would still have a variety of shares with different cost bases. Strategy number 5. So let's say you've given what you want to charity, you've sold what you can with little gains, and then you've even offset what charitable deduction you got with some additional sales. Then you packaged what you could into a 351 exchange, and you still had some stock left over. Another strategy you could use, and this works particularly well if you have several stocks that are highly appreciated, is you could use a direct index. So how a direct index would work is if you had $500,000 in an account and 100,000 of that was in one company, you could put it all into one fund that would buy a variety of stocks complementing what you already have. Now, since some of those stocks are obviously going to lose money during the years, they will sell those stocks and harvest those losses and use those losses as a chance to sell some additional appreciated stock that you have. So you're using the math where most stocks don't do very well to create losses that allow you to further diversify your highly appreciated shares. Strategy 6. You could try using a thing called an exchange fund. An exchange fund has some pretty strict limitations in that you have to normally have $5 million in liquid assets, and normally you have to contribute over $1 million to one of these exchange funds. There's at least one provider that started to come around with lower minimums for these, but for the present, unless you're very careful, this is a strategy that'll only work for those with a very high net worth. So what would happen is you and a bunch of other investors would all take your highly appreciated stock and contribute them all to one account. And so we would each have shares of this one account. What would happen is we would leave it in this account, and then after 7 years, this account would distribute the shares back to us. But instead of getting your own shares, you're going to get a little bit of everybody's shares, so a diversified portfolio. There's a lot of obstacles with this in that a exchange fund can't just accept any stock under the sun. They have to actually be careful to only accept stocks that will diversify what the other people are doing. So we can't have just Google and Tesla shares. We have to have Google and Johnson & Johnson and Apple and Tesla. So let's talk now a little bit about some of the psychological barriers that keep people trapped. The most common mental trap is people thinking that if I hold it, it's going to go to zero. But if I sell it, it's going to go to zero, and all my friends at the company are going to get rich. So this isn't about being disloyal to your company. You can still believe in your company and protect your family's financial future. These two things aren't mutually exclusive. Now, let's spend a minute talking about specific types of equity compensation as well here. For stock options, the timing on this is absolutely critical, both from a tax standpoint and from a diversification standpoint and from an opportunity cost standpoint. So we're going to do a whole separate video on when you should exercise stock options, but the key is you need to be very careful about the tax implications and making sure you get the most out of those. For restricted stocks, though, my advice is a lot simpler. You can sell them immediately when they vest. Don't let your emotional attachment override the financial logic. With a restricted stock, as soon as it vests and becomes yours, you've already paid the taxes on that amount. Then there will be capital gains on any growth that happens after that. However, if you sell it immediately and go straight to a diversified portfolio, then you're already good and there's no additional taxes. So what about selling in a systematic way? This is where 10b5-1 plans come in. A 10b5-1 plan would let you sell a company stock systematically without the appearance of insider trading. It's going to remove all of the emotion from your selling decisions and create a disciplined approach to diversification. You can work with your compliance department and your financial advisor to kind of set up a selling schedule that would be based on your own diversification goals. For those of us at Minnesota companies like 3M or Target, Minnesota's tax treatment of different strategies can impact your overall plan, so you want to be very careful to coordinate with your federal tax planning. Here's the action plan. First, let's calculate your current concentration percentage right now. And if you have more than 10% in your own company stock or any individual stock, you should start creating a plan. Next, you should choose the right combination of the strategies we just talked about that will work with your situation. You're going to really want to work with a qualified financial advisor who really understands this. If you need one, you can click in our footer and find one of the advisors here at Quarry Hill. Last of all, you should set up a systematic approach. This might include a 10b5-1 plan, a charitable giving strategy, direct indexing, or a combination of all of those things. But the key is to remember this: the concentration risk doesn't reduce with time. You can't time the market, so you might as well start your diversification process now. I hope these strategies give you some tools to escape the company stock trap while minimizing your tax bill. With the permanent nature of the new tax law changes, it gives us some planning certainty that we haven't had in years. So don't let company loyalty put your family's financial future at risk. You've worked too hard to build up your wealth to have it all tied in just one stock, no matter how great that company is. If you found this video helpful, we've got lots of tools and resources to help you implement these strategies. And if you want to discuss how these might apply to you, please give our office a call and click in our footer to set up a meeting. Thanks for watching. I'd be happy to answer any questions about how you can escape your own company stock trap.